I have a gift for you. Now you may take more than one, but I want you to take at least one. And by the time they get to the back, you may end up with a dozen or so each. I'm sorry. You're not chocolate dogs. We're probably going to lose you for the first 5 minutes while you're sitting on. What in the world is he handing out petals from a daisy? Actually, I like these daisies. They're called crazy daisies because of the colors, but nonetheless. I want you to think about a time in your life where you saw that God was working, and a time where you know that God was very present in your life. I think, what is it, Daryl? I think you had told me or introduced me to the Quaker questions. And I think one of the first Quaker questions was, when did God become real? Did I say that right? Okay. One of the questions, when did God become real in your life? So that's what I want you to think about. It may have been at a good time. It may have been a wedding. It may have been a birth of a child. It may have been at your baptism. It might have been when you made a personal commitment to Christ. It might have been your confirmation. It might be something that has no significance with a spiritual event. It may have been graduation from school. It might have been your first car. But it was something that you remember that stands out as a positive thing, that you knew that God was present. Now there are times also where God was present in your life where there were some, well, they weren't positive, we'll put it that way. But it was a time in your life where you felt God's presence as well. It might have been through a time of death, or an accident, or even divorce. And there were times where you knew, in spite of going through tough times, that God was very present in your life. And there are times, those times, many of them, we are reminded of them because of something that we have. It might be a photograph. It might be a ring, if you're thinking about your wedding. It might have been a video. It might have been a tassel that you received when you graduated from high school or college. It might even be a tattoo. It might be a diploma. It might even be one of those little rubber bracelets that you see a lot of people wearing. A reminder of a major event in your life.
You left one
What was that, Donna?
my confirmation Bible.
Your confirmation Bible. Thank you. That's a great example. That's a great example. And probably when you see your confirmation Bible, you are reminded of the rigors that you were put through.
And all the people that were
And the people that were in your class. Wonderful. That's a great reminder. That's a great reminder. I have one that's, and it's not one of those events that I think about a lot, but some of you know that I have this fear of heights. I do not like being where I can't put my feet on the ground. Even climbing up on the ladder, when we go to hang Christmas lights, even Mimi knows that I hold the ladder steady and she climbs the ladder. I don't like to be up that high. That's me. So I have a reminder of a time where I conquered that, and it's what I'm wearing today. It's a tie with a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge on it. Aaron and Tina had lived in San Francisco, and I decided that, wow, I had never seen the Golden Gate Bridge. This would really be cool. And Aaron decided that he was going to get the old man to walk across the Golden Gate Bridge. I don't know if any of you have been to the Golden Gate Bridge. And you kind of, yeah, just thinking about it gives me the jeebies. But I will say that when we got across the bridge the first time, and of course you park at one side, so you got to go both directions, right? You get on the one side, and there was a gift shop. And I told Aaron, I said, you know, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Well, for me, it was been there, done that, got the tie. I had to go in and buy a tie with the Golden Gate Bridge on it, just to show that I made it. That was a reminder for me. And it may seem silly to some people, but it's a real fear. And this was my way of remembering that even in those times, that at least Aaron was there. You know, the cars were flying by. Aaron was there, and God gave me a sense of peace for part of the trip across. But Aaron was there between me and the edge of the bridge, so there was a sense. You understand what I'm saying? Well, Keisha, if you want to call up the first one. There is a spot in the movie where you remember this. Go ahead, Keisha. Let's go ahead and start this one.
George, what's wrong? Wrong everything. Why you call this a happy family? Why do we have to have all these kids?
Dad, how do you spell Franklin's
I
first
don't
name?
know. Why, that's your mother.
Where are you
We're
going?
going out to see Zuzu.
Told me to write a thing for tomorrow. F-R-A-N-K-I-N. Hi, Daddy.
What happened to you?
I'm on a solar.
Why not? Where do you think you're going?
Want to do my solar drink?
I'll get out of the car. I'll get the drink. No, here.
Look, Daddy. Taste it.
Place this together. What is it? Oh, all right, right. Now we do something. You gotta get some sleep. I know. You just go to sleep. And then you can dream about it. And it'll be a whole card.
All right, Keisha. There were some times during this movie where we saw a very soft George Bailey. One of those times was right here. I don't know if you noticed it or not, but did you notice that as he put the petals in his pocket, that Zuzu saw him do that? Oh, now you're going to have to watch that again, aren't you? Yeah, her eyes were focused going down as he put that in his pocket. This was a rough time. As you remember the scenes before this, I think I turned up the wrong one. As you watch the scenes before this one, you could see that it was when Uncle Billy had lost the $8,000, and there was. It was a very nervous time. It was a very tragic, because George saw in this that he was going to go to jail, because it was pretty obvious that he had taken the money or had lost the money. And so he was responsible, and he was going to end up paying the price for that. Okay, so you want to get the next clip ready, or is it? Oh, it's already. Is it already there? Oh, you are too good for me. Good. There was a time. Go ahead and let's show that one too.
Well, who are you?
I told you, George, I'm your guardian angel.
Yeah, I seeing all these strange things here?
Do you understand, George? It's because you were not born.
If I wasn't born, who am I?
You're nobody. You have no identity.
Oh, what do you mean, no identity? My name's George Bailey.
There is no George Bailey. You have no papers, no card, no driver's license, no 4F card, no insurance policy. They're not there either.
What?
Zuzu's Petals. You've been given a great gift, George. A chance to see what the world would be like without you.
Oh, this is some sort of a funny dream. So, I'm going home.
Oh, what hole?
Now, shut up! Cut it out! You're crazy. That's what I think. You're screwy. You're driving me crazy, too. I'm seeing things here. I'm going home and see my wife and family. You understand that? And I'm going home alone.
You notice when George was told by Clarence that he had received a great gift. He could see what the world would be like without him. George couldn't believe it. Who am I? Well, you're a nobody. And you notice what George did? He immediately went for his wallet. My guess is he wanted to go in there and see some sort of identification card. He wanted to see his driver's license. He wanted to see that. And he said, no, it's not there. Your draft card, your 4F card wasn't there. Your papers weren't there. Your insurance policy weren't there. And then he went to the one thing that he remembered from his life, even though it was just a few moments earlier. He went for his pocket. Clarence stopped him. He says, no, they're not there either. Even before George said what he was doing or made any sort of mention to Zuzu's Petals. You know, the children of Israel had the same sort of issue. They had the same issue that all of us have. But they were called to set up a monument that would remind them of a good thing. God had brought them through, and they had come to a spot where Joshua had commanded them to go into the river and to bring out a stone so they could set up a monument. Did you notice how big the stone was in the reading? Let's see. Go into the middle of the Jordan in front of the ark of the Lord your God, and each of you, meaning the 12, must pick up one stone and carry it out on your shoulders. This was not a little rock. This was a boulder that God had commanded them to bring out and to build a memorial so that they would remember and that they could share their story with their children of how God had ministered to them and brought them through the tough time. Joshua told them, in the future, you will be able to tell the story. You will be able to tell your children, remind them of how good God was to them. These stones to stand as a permanent memorial. Do we have a permanent memorial for our own lives? You know, there are mentions of this all through Scripture. Another one came from 1 Samuel chapter 21. It was another, if you will, a Zuzu petal moment. 1 Samuel chapter 21. David is fleeing for his life from the king. And he stops in because he is hungry, and he finds a priest. And he asks the priest for something to eat. And the priest gave him, Scripture tells us, consecrated bread. think about that for a minute. Consecrated bread. Bread that was specifically set aside as a memorial, as they remembered the Passover and how God had provided for the children of Israel. What's the symbolism that we use every time we have the Lord's Supper? The bread. Jesus breaking of the bread when he was celebrating the Passover with his disciples. It was a vivid reminder of God's provision and God's protection in their lives. David had followed up with another request. He had asked the priest, he said, I need a weapon. He wanted to be protected from the king who was coming after him. And you notice what weapon that the priest gave him? He gave him the sword of Goliath. Talk about a Zuzu pedal moment for David. David had a way to remember that God was with him when he conquered the giant Goliath. And now he had the sword of Goliath that was going to protect him. It was a good reminder for David. You know, all of us need visual aids to kind of help with our memory. For George, when he reached into his pocket, and later in the movie, you would see the scene where he's standing at the bridge for the second time. And he reaches into his pocket and he finds Zuzu's petals. It was his moment where he realized that God was with him and that God had even answered the prayers that he had had, where he just says, God, if you're there, help me. You remember the prayer. I guess there's always a few prayers said in a bar. But that's where George heard it. And George felt those petals and realized that he was back again, that he was back in real time, if you will, and he understood what that would be like. And so those petals served as a reminder for him at that time. We can be reminded of that. I'm reminded of that. I look down and I see the little rubber bracelets. I look down and I see my wedding ring. I look and see pictures of our wedding, pictures, family pictures with the kids on our wall that adorn our home. And I'm reminded of those times where God has been there and God has united us together as a family and as a couple. Those are good times. And I'm reminded of those over and over. I need those visual aids, and many of you the same way. Whether or not it's a petal, or whether or not it's a picture, or a Bible, or a certificate, or a diploma, or whatever. Now you see why you got petals. I want you to take the petals. Ladies, if you have your purses, just put the petals in your purse. Guys, put them in a pocket. Maybe if you don't feel too awkward about it, put it in your wallet. Somewhere down the line, you'll be looking through your purse, ladies, and you're going to see some petals at the bottom, and it will remind you that God is with you, and that God continues to be with you through the good times and the bad times. Maybe this Christmas, we need to be reminded of those things. Some of us will spend Christmas alone. Some of us will spend Christmas with a family gathering that would fill the sanctuary. Please bring them on Christmas Eve. There are times where, thank you. There are times, no matter what, where we will sense God's presence with us, in the good and in the bad. God is with us. Let me go back one more mention of King David. The most favorite and famous writings of King David started off with, "The Lord is my shepherd." You notice that there is a line in the 23rd Psalm that said, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are there with me." Now you notice that David didn't say, "Even though I'm in the valley of the shadow of death and I'm standing still and looking around me and becoming overwhelmed by the death, by the tragedy around me." David says, "I walk through the shadow of death." David realizes that he needs to keep walking and that God is there with him. To put it in more recent terms, Winston Churchill, when you find yourself walking through hell, keep walking. Good reminder for all of us. And it's a reminder that God is there through good times and through the bad times. We walk through. We don't stay in it. We may dream like George. "Oh, I can't see that I've ever done anything any good. I may struggle and I may just think, why in the world am I even alive?" And yes, I know that some of you have said that. Because for some reason you felt like you had to share that with me. I understand that. You get to a time where you feel like, what am I doing? What am I doing worthwhile? Why doesn't God just take me? George said that same thing. He got to see a glimpse of what life would be like without a George Bailey. Wow. He was given a gift. And you and I have been given a gift too. Remember the gift of God being with you. The Petals may do that. Let's pray. Gracious God,